Welcome back to the Robert Trujillo bass rig, where you're going to learn all about Robert Trujillo and his time in Metallica, where we uncover all of his custom basses from Fernandes, Nash, Tobias, Zon, Rickenback, Yamaha, and everything you've ever wanted to know about his 35 plus Warwick basses. This is the second video in a two-part series on Robert's bass rig. If you'd like to hear about his first basses, how he got started with ST, Infectious grooves, and Ozzy Osbourne, you can find the link to part 1 in the description. But right now, we're talking Metallica. Robert Trujillo's first appearance with Metallica was during 2004's documentary Some Kind of Monster, which accurately captures the journey. Humorously, Rob admitted in an interview with For Bass Players Only, "I didn't bring a bass, they had basses for me there." And we see in the documentary he used a Tobacco Burst Stingray 5 during his audition. But you might be thinking, hang on a minute, how did you get this audition in the first place? Rob explained in an interview with Juice magazine, "I knew Kirk because we had toured together when ST was opening up for Metallica in 93 to 94. Here we are in 2001 and I'm reuniting with Kirk through surfing. Then, 8 months went by and I got a call from them. Come and jam with us, man, we want to check you out." While the audition was flawless in the movie, Rob himself was not having a fun time. The first audition was really interesting. It was a 2-day audition. The first day we were just hanging out. At the end of the night, I was in the parking lot and Lars was like, "Let's go get a beer, let's get a drink."
We ended up drinking till about 5 in the morning, and they had these meetings started promptly at 11. I had the worst hangover of my life, and I've got to play music. I mean, I've got to jam, and I'm thinking to myself, this is torture.
I pulled myself from the round table and went and hung out with the bass tech. I didn't bring a bass up, so they had some instruments there and I was testing the instruments out. Then, finally, they jammed with me. The playing audition went really well. I think the reason I wasn't so nervous was because I was kinda buzzed. During the Metallica audition, Lars would say to Rob, "That's a pretty fucking mighty bass tone you got going there." To which Rob replies, "It's the Mesa and the high watt." But the subtitles display this as Mesa in the high watt, meaning a Mesa Boogie head into a high watt cabinet. I don't necessarily see a high watt cabinet, but that doesn't mean there isn't one. What I can see though is a high watt head sat on top of a Mesa cabinet, so it might be that. Taking a look at the state of the room, there are cabinets and amplifiers all over the place. As James Hetfield would rightfully say in an interview with MTV,
HQ for us is the sanctuary, complete, well, it's a clubhouse where we can come and just feel completely safe. Having all our gear here, you know, it is like a playground for a musician.
In that respect, Rob could be using anything in this room at any time. He's surrounded by Mesa 400s, rectifiers, Marshalls, Ampex, high watts, and all sorts of other DIs. Rob auditioned over 2 days in December 2002, and by February 23rd, 2003, he was officially in Metallica.
I can't really talk right now.
Now came the hard part of learning a vast catalogue of 22 years of songs and the new album, Saint Anger. On learning the back catalogue, Rob mused. Everybody else had the music figured out because they wrote it or recorded it. But the new guy needs to do his homework. Sometimes I bust out the tablature books and really investigate. Following the success of joining Metallica, Rob and the band would film a live in the studio bonus DVD playing the entirety of Saint Anger. And it's here we start to get an idea of what gear Rob would be using. At this time in 2003, Rob was still endorsed with Fernandes. Take a look at part 1 if you'd like to hear the whole story with how he started using those. Throughout video footage, more and more of Rob's own basses will come into play, like his silver Gravity 5 lowrider and the purple Hinano Fernandes. I did tell you it was purple. A second Stingray in deep blue. This bass does belong to him and is seen on the 1994 cover of Bass Player magazine. And then hanging around in the back of the scenes, you'll find his original red and blue Tobias basses. To my eye, it looks like these performances took place over a number of days, as the band's attire changes from song to song and different basses and amplifiers disappear and reappear throughout the set. Wide shots of the studio show an Ampeg SVT2 sitting to the left of the rig on top of an Ampeg 8x10. A high watt 405, I presume, is in the middle atop Marshall cabinets, and SVT3 and SVT3 Pro sit to the far right again on top of matching Ampeg 8x10s. On top of those is a 420 Peterson strobe tuner, which are superior tools for tuning. Later on in the set, you'll see a Mesa dual rectifier on top of the guitar cabs, with an Avalon DI on top of that. Flanked on the left is an Ampeg SBT2 and possibly a GK 2001 head. The far right still has the SBT3s. Now, let me get real with you guys. Whilst doing my research, I discovered Rob has used well over 100 basses, 80 of which are used in Metallica alone. If you want the full list of all the details, like dates when the bass was first seen and their specs, head to the show notes linked up above or down below. In the interest of time, I'm going to be talking about the new basses introduced and avoid having to repeat myself, okay? Okay. Rob was quickly thrown into the deep end with Metallica, from playing a show at San Quentin Prison to live at the Fillmore and even MTV Icon in the space of a few hours. Happy-go-lucky Rob would call it a worthy initiation.
Well, you know, people ask about the hazing and all of that kind of stuff. That didn't happen. But I tell you, to me, what did happen was going from like LA to San Francisco overnight, immediately jumping into the 11 new tracks, the St. Anger songs, and having to learn them in a very short amount of time. We're talking about songs that are no less than 7 minutes long with a very elaborate arrangement. That to me was enough of a challenge right there and enough of an initiation process. First gig being at San Quentin, no rehearsal. Soon after that, 4 shows at the Fillmore, surprise songs that wouldn't even have made the C list or the D list. And then also like second gig being the Icon show, you know, MTV Icon medley, All Eyes on You. I mean, that's enough right there. That's initiation, so I forget about it.
Footage and photos from the MTV Icon show Rob using Fernandes basses, all of which are gravity models unless mentioned otherwise. A standard white model and black model, his silver 5-string custom lowrider, and the black sparkle Mex sticker bass first seen with Ozzy Osbourne. 4 music videos were released to promote Saint Anger, with the lowrider seen in Saint Anger and Frantic, while the Unnamed Feeling showed a brand new Fernandes in silver with blue flame. This bass is probably the most iconic in Rob's career after using Tobias. Some Kind of Monster shows the purple Hinano Fernandes. The Madly in Anger at the World Tour lasted 12 months between 2003 and 2004. Rob would chime in a 2003 Bass Player magazine interview, "I'll be using Fernandes. And as for the Tobiases," Rob interjected, "they've given me so many good years on the road and in the studio, so I'm retiring them." Rob would cycle between 7 Fernandes basses, which now includes 2 new models. The olive green White Star Army bass, and a blue sparkle with a tiki decal in the bridge. Regarding the amplifier rig, bass tech Zach Harmon added, "Robert is now using 3 SBT2 heads, with 3 Ampeg 8x10 Pro Series cabinets, and a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier head, with 2 Mesa Boogie 4x12 cabs." Separate from the interview, the D. Markley artist page would list Rob as using SR2000s in a medium string set, usually supplemented with a 130B from Ernie Ball. He would use their strings up until 2009 before using his own signature set with Dunlop. More on that later on. As for effects, the bass player also reported the use of Tech 21 products for distortion and additional bass tone, as well as a Boss chorus and flanger. A Morley power wah can also be seen on stage at this time. Since the year 2000, typical Metallica stadium shows would use an elevated walkway set design, and their amplifiers and cabinets are stowed away. When this would not be possible, like during summer festivals, the band would use a stripped down backline instead. During these shows, Rob can be seen using 6 Ampeg CO heads, with 2 Mesa Boogie dual rectifiers, all going through Ampeg 8x10s and 2 Mesa 4x12s. But lest we not forget our friend Rex Brown. He too used Ampeg CLs in great quantities, but most were dummy cabs due to practicality. Haulage is expensive. Towards the end of the tour in 2005, Metallica.com vaguely added to Rob's bio that he used high watt and Ampeg SBT3s. Occasionally on this tour, you'll find the odd sighting of a Stingray 5 in either deep blue or white. Additionally, 4 Zon basses would join the ranks on this tour. Firstly, the Killer Clown with a custom paint job. The second is a gunmetal grey Sonus Elite 5, a tiger red looking finish, and a natural quilt. The Killer Clown bass has been used to play Sad But True at almost every show up until present day. It would be easier to point out the shows where he didn't use the Killer Clown on that track. Owner of Zon Guitars, Joe Zon, shared his creative process in an interview with Cliff Engel. When Robert left Ozzy and signed with Metallica, he started looking for a new bass. Robert liked the Sonos body, and so we started with that first. Robert was very particular, and he knew exactly what he was after. The maple body is a little harder and denser than our standard ash body, which we use on most of our basses. The bass definitely has a serious amount of edge and definition due to the maple. It has to, because Robert needs to cut through Metallica's guitars. Zon would soon release a consumer version of the bass to the public in 2004, named the Zon Sonus RT5 signature model. After finishing the tour, Metallica would not be seen again until 2006, where they inducted Black Sabbath into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and performed a medley tribute. In this show, Rob used a black custom Fender Precision, with an Andre the Giant sticker on the bridge. This bass was first seen in shows with Black Label Society in 2002. During both summers of 2006 and 2007, the band would start touring the Escape from the Studio and Sick of the Studio tour, respectively. The only new addition seen on this tour was a custom Fender Jazz, which, by the looks of it, is the black precision bass just mentioned, now transformed into a jazz bass. You can see Andre on the bridge, and the scuff marks are in the same place. Supplementing the Fender Jazz was a Fernandes bass dubbed by some as the Maltese Cross. Although if you really want to split hairs, I would suggest the pattern looks more like a cross patty. The rest of the basses you've already seen. The minimal stage plan can also be seen at certain events with even less amps on stage than usual.
Fewer. What?
Rob has 3 Ampeg AV 50th anniversary heads on stage with 3 8x10 caps. In the middle of that is a rectifier with a pair of matching 4x12. Again, half is probably for show. You can see the red light on this amp, which usually means, according to the manual, in standby mode the LED glows red. In the on mode, when the high voltage comes on, it glows green. 2008 would prove to be a massive year for Metallica, with the release of the long-awaited Death Magnetic that September. Bass Player magazine revealed in October 2008 the Fernandes silver bass with blue flames took the helm for recording Death Magnetic, and Rob used a bass rig that largely mirrored his live setup. Like with the St. Anger DVD, we have yet another glimpse of Metallica recording Death Magnetic in the studio, wherein you'll see a handful of Fernandes already mentioned. Within this 2-hour video, there are numerous shots of Rob playing in the rehearsal space, quite possibly using a mixture of Ampeg AVs and a Mesa M-Pulse with a Mesa 6x10 underneath. It would appear the performance space is regularly used to experiment and play with new equipment. Whilst later in the video, Rob's bass rig racks can be seen with the usual assortment of SVT2s and Mesa rectifiers. This was clarified further in the article, and Rob reported using 2 Ampeg SVT2 Pros with matching 8x10 and a Mesa quad rectifier, quad head. That does not sound right, dual surely. Hooked up to a pair of Mesa 4x12s, and the last remaining 2 amps are spares. His bass rack contains a Furman power conditioner, Shure wireless system, Korg DTR 1000 tuner, and 2 full drawers of effects pedals, which included an Electro Harmonix Qtron, Sanzap XXL and bass driver, Boss OC2 Octave, and Morley Power Wah. These were all routed to a Voodoo Lab Ground Control Pro. Lastly, a Ridge Farm gas cooker mic preamp serves as the house DI. In addition to this, Rob's Ampeg artist page lists him using SVT3 Pros and 8x10E cabinets during this period. Rob also added, "The fact that I hit pretty hard creates part of my sound. I use hot EMG pickups, which work well for the attack and presence. I usually have both on, with the tone knob usually midway up. I like a semi-scoop sound with a little bit of mid to cut through, but I don't want the mids to overpower the bottom. I like the bottom to feel like the heavy bag in boxing. I don't want the bass to slap you in the face. I want it to punch you in the gut." The article goes on to report a Japanese-built custom ESP 5-string with a scorched relic finish, a bass I have not come across in the wild, unfortunately. And secondly, an ESP Trujillo model Army Green, which rarely makes appearances if any, but has been seen in a 2017 rehearsal video, not to be confused with the almost identical Olive Fernandes with White Star. With that said, a third ESP 205 with blue sparkles emerged, and was painted by famous artist Donnie Gillies, aka Dirty Donnie, who has created a bunch of artwork for Metallica you have no doubt seen before. This bass was sighted early 2008. Additionally, a blue Sonus RT was listed, which very well could refer to the hood wrap paintwork that emanated on tour not long after. Around the same time, news was released by Yamaha that Rob would be wielding 3 new custom basses, modelled on the Yamaha TRB-5P2. John Galdessi, master luthier at Yamaha Hollywood, created 3 basses for Trujillo: Primer Red, Primer Green and Natural, with an effect that was meant to resemble a rat rod car, with primer paint and aged hardware. Although the Natural Yamaha was mentioned, I never came across it in my research, but I do have a theory about what happened to it. More on that in a minute. 2 new videos will follow to promote the album. The Day That Never Comes with the Blue Flame Fernandes, and Broken, Beat and Scarred, showing numerous basses seen on tour at the time, including a green Rickenbacker, Fernandes, Tobias, and new arrival Nash Precision. The World Magnetic Tour started in September 2008 and finished in November 2010. During the whole 2 years of Metallica touring across the globe, they played up to 187 shows, which means a whole lot of gear. Again, Rob used Fernandes basses already mentioned, so I'll carry on to the new additions. And the full list as always can be found in the show notes, linked up above or found down below. 12 Fernandes basses were used in total, of which 3 were new. A Gravity 5 in aqua, or maybe it's purple, you never know, with a square looking sticker on it rather than an oval driving sticker. And what appears to me to be a custom Fernandes gradual 5-string. This is the only occurrence I've seen of this bass. The 3rd Fernandes bass was painted by Robert's wife, Chloe Trujillo. Speaking of Chloe, she's a brilliant artist and fashion designer in her own right, and has regularly painted eye-catching designs on Robert's basses over the years. During this period, you'll see her work on the Fernandes 5-string eyeball bass. She has a thing for eyeballs, don't ask me why. At the start of this tour, this bass was typically used during the song All Nightmare Long. Additionally, she used pyrography to burn an Aztec calendar onto a new custom Tobias and the natural Yamaha TRP. This is probably the final result of the natural finish Yamaha I mentioned previously. The Aztec de la Chloe Tobias can almost certainly be seen during live performances of The Day That Never Comes during this period. Chloe would burn 3 more Aztec inspired designs onto Warwick bodies over the next few years and paint on several others. Furthermore, introduced in this period were 5 Nash basses. Nash guitars and basses are created to replicate the look and feel of vintage pieces, with updates that appeal to a modern player. Nash basses first appeared in 2008, and Rob's first model was a creamy white Precision with a tortoise pickguard. Secondly, a 62 model black Precision with a copper pickguard, and a yellow Precision with a white pickguard which was seen in rehearsals. For reasons unbeknownst to me, this bass was nicknamed Shit Blaster on the Metallica gear page. This was followed by another black Precision with a chrome pickguard and maple neck. The name on the headstock reads Jailbreak. All of the Precisions just mentioned are fitted with the Marzio P pickups. Next up is a very special Nash bass which has rightfully earned the name Flamethrower. Rob mused. It was in a fire in the state of Washington. Bill Nash, the owner, asked if we were interested in this instrument. We were like yes, and we wired that puppy up, put all the right electronics in there, and it feels great, sounds great, and looks amazing. So, Flamethrower rules. Speaking of Precisions, this black and white stripe bass appeared very briefly in 2009. This is the only sign I've come across of this bass, and unsure whether it be Fender or Nash. There's not much more I can tell you about it, so we'll move on. Basses that regularly made appearances included 2 Zons, Killer Clown and Hoodrat, a brand new custom 5-string Tobias in blue, notice the diamond knob outlay, a modified green Rickenbacker 4003, nicknamed Mean Green with 2 EMG Jazz pickups, and a backup model in blue has also been seen. Lastly, the red and green Yamaha rat rods were a frequent choice during the set. The 2 Yamaha basses can be seen at the start of the Death Magnetic tour, and were phased out in 2010 in place of Warwick basses. Speaking of which, Warwick basses slowly started to trickle into Rob's bass rig in 2008. Rob primarily used Warwick streamers from here on out. According to the Ace of Base interview with Metallica's So What magazine, he was in talks with Warwick as early as 2003 and has accumulated at least 35 Warwick streamers in both 4 and 5-string models from 2008 up until present day in 2021. According to my research, a 5-string streamer with a Nirvana black oil finish was one of the first to appear during the summer in 2008. Early models have 4 control knobs, and later models have just 1. This was soon followed by several more Warwicks comprising of reflective surfaces, such as the Chrome and Heavy Chrome model, Terminator Black Chrome, Blue Chrome with white pickups, Matrix Turquoise, and an Ocean Blue coloured oil finish. On why Rob chose Warwicks, he would disclose. After the Tobias split, I started checking out different brands, and Warwick, comfort, sound, power, commitment. I found that Warwick was very accommodating, and they were really, truly passionate to the craft. Warwick could also accommodate the need for the amount of basses that we had to take on the road at that time. Then, after a couple of years, they really got the type of bass I wanted down. It took a little while, but there's comfort and there's sound. I use different electronics than what other people might use, very specific that I like. Taking a look at the Warwick custom gallery, they have a picture of nearly every custom bass they've created for Rob over the years. The specifications typically list EMG pickups and Bartolini electronics, some of which use a modified FL voicing, which is used for a more focused mid control and used in similar preamps from the 1980s. He would also add in an interview with Music Radar, "The guitar just sings. It's not like my necks are huge or anything, I keep my necks pretty tight, even for a 5-string, and have them modelled after the P-bass." 2 years after the release of Death Magnetic, Jim Dunlop released a signature string set alongside Rob. The 4-string set was made of stainless steel from 45 to 105, and the bottom 3 strings were tapered. A 5-string set also included a nickel B string from 45 to 130. Tapered strings are said to have a bit more flexibility and allow the string to vibrate more effectively than untapered strings. In addition to the signature string release, Jim Dunlop also added Rob to their artist page and included Rob using an MXR bass DI, custom audio electronics boost overdrive, the boost line driver, 10-band EQ, and the stereo chorus. These days it's not so clear whether or not Rob himself is still using their equipment. Posted around 2011, TC Electronics would chime in that Rob uses their D2 delay, casually stating, "The D2 delay is part of the Robert Trujillo Metallica sound." Could you give us a little bit more? That just sounds like SEO. The World Magnetic Tour would end in winter 2010, and Metallica reappeared in the summer festival season in 2011. Rob used much of the gear already used in the World Magnetic Tour, apart from 3 additions. This 55 or 57 gold sparkle Nash Precision. I presume it's Nash, it's pretty fancy. Again, paintwork created by Dirty Donny. This bass can be seen on Dirty Donny's gallery, photographed alongside Dirty Donny Edition Way Huge pedals, the Swollen Pickle, and the Angry Troll. Secondly, a new Warwick with artwork titled Jungle Bass, created by Chloe. Lastly, one special, very iconic bass would be seen at the shows. The original Jaco Pastorius Bass of Doom, a 1962 fretless Fender jazz bass which Pastorius had defretted himself. According to MusicGearReview.com, Robert had bought the bass 3 years after it surfaced in a New York City music store, after being stolen almost 20 years earlier. Although Robert legally owns the instrument, he had agreed in writing to relinquish the instrument to the Pastorius family at any time for the same purchase price. Following the performances, Rob would return the bass back to his own personal Fort Knox and kept under lock and key. It also appears Rob commissioned Warwick to try and recreate the magic of the Bass of Doom. This fretless CV model debuted on Warwick's YouTube channel in 2015. Rolling into 2012 came the European Black Album Tour, where the band celebrated the 20th anniversary of the album by playing it backwards. In reverse order, not actually backwards. That would be silly. New gear follows Rob on this tour leg, with another 3 brand new Nash basses. A road-worn red P with copper pickguard, a Mexican flag P, and lastly a new Flamer bass. Flamethrower number 2, yet another bass that spent its time being on fire. This one can be differentiated from the original by the melted pickguard, lack of a thumb rest, and the grey charcoal colour. And of course we had another sprinkling of Warwick basses to the rig. The iconic Rusty Warwick made its debut during this time. Secondly, a burgundy red oil finish colour with a black middle part, as well as the Nirvana black coloured oil finish, and a new special Aztec bronze finish. In terms of amplifications, you can see some of the backline during the shows. But as I mentioned earlier, it looks like much of this setup is for decoration rather than practicality. The same can be said for when they play in the round, and by 2012, their amplifiers would be removed from the stage altogether. Metallica's touring was pretty consistent amplifier-wise, with small hints across the web confirming this. Metallica continued with the summer tours from 2013 up until 2015, and another 4 more Warwicks were added to Rob's rig. That's 13 Warwicks so far if you're counting at home. we see a brand new Aztec bass with deep reds and greens, a chrome acid green model, Nirvana black finish with red middle part, and a satin matte black finish arriving in 2013. Not to forget a charcoal forest jazz with chrome pickguard that was also cited. Its 5-string counterpart was also created and seen in 2017. Metallica also released their concert film titled Through the Nether. Much of the set comprises of Nash or Warwick basses. However, during a rendition of Hit the Lights, a 70s looking red Fender Jazz appeared. What is more, 3 unusual basses are spotted during this period. During the 30th anniversary of Kill 'Em All at Metallica's own Orion Festival, Rob used an Orion black and gold 1 Cliff Burton tribute bass, followed by a Warwick Streamer CV, which was seen on tour in 2015, with colours that remind me of a Steve Harris Precision. Lastly, a grey Tobias, which was played during a Metallica show in Antarctica. Speaking of the Antarctica show, with hints appearing as early as 2011, we know for certain James and Kirk were toying with moving away from their cumbersome analog amplifiers and cabinet to a more reliable and lightweight digital setup. By the end of 2013, Metallica guitar tech Chad Zamish was spotted on Facebook admitting that Metallica had bought out the remaining stock of Fractal AxeFXIIIs for their upcoming Antarctica show. Chad would also comment that there would be no amplifier speakers at this performance. Guinness World Records also added, unlike regular Metallica gigs, the Antarctica concert was held without traditional amplification due to the icy continent's fragile environment. Amplifiers were instead enclosed in isolation cabinets, with the sound transmitted to the audience via headphones.
Neat!
The digital trend would continue into 2014, with an unidentified moderator on the Fractal Audio forum confirming that everything on Metallica's current South American tour is AxeFXIII. From this point on, it's rare if ever we see Metallica playing all out with cabinets on stage again, opting for a more minimal simplistic setup. Alas, one very small amplifier does make appearance in 2014 at the MAP Benefit Fund. Metallica paid tribute to Ozzy Osbourne at the Music Cares Fund Tribute Benefit in 2014, with Rob using an Ampeg B15 alongside a Dusty Hill Precision made by Fender and a Warwick Alien during a short acoustic set. While still fulfilling their summer tour duties in 2015, Metallica would still find time to slip away to the studio to work on their upcoming album. Hardwired To Self Destruct was the 10th studio album from the band and released in November 2016. Rob described working with producer Greg Fiedelman in an interview with Music Radar in 2017. It's great how he was able to balance everything, to where you have that beautiful traditional rhythm guitar sound, and the drums are there, but guess what? So is the bass. It's very present on this album sonically, which is cool. Rob and Fiedelman were reported to have spent countless hours in the studio together, blind testing different gear, to make sure the melodic heart of each song hit hard and heavy. Rob added in a bass player article from 2020, "We did a listening test where we had 6 different basses, and recorded the same part of the song, like a blindfold taste test. You play through it several times and try to figure out which instrument stands out. There was a specific Warwick 5-string that just took control of this body of music and owned it. The Warwick crushed it. Traditionally, I've used a lot of other basses. I love Nash Ps, and I love some of my old Fernandes. But my Warwick 5-string dominated this album. You can hear the subtleties of the low B." Rob also added that an ESP bass was used on the album for a few songs, praising its sub-grit. This bass has been confirmed to be the ESP-205 painted by Dirty Donny. When asked if Rob had a sound in mind when he created the album, Rob responded, "I always try to envision a heavy punching bag, and I really think we achieved that on Hardwired. Whether it's the tone or the power of the instrument, it's all there on this album. It's present. Even back in the day with Cliff, his presence was there and it was enormous. But the bass was sometimes buried. On this album, it's not buried. It's right there with the other guys. And that makes me feel good for the future. Yes." Fiedelman would also share with SoundOnSound.com, "I recorded the bass with 2 DIs, a Little Labs PCP and a Ridge Farm gas cooker. The bass also went through 2 SVT amps, one relatively clean and one really overdriven. And I took a DI from the clean amp and had a Sennheiser 421 on each amp." An archive page of Metallica.com now confirms SVT2 heads instead of SVT3, with 8x10 cabs and a boogie dual rectifier at this time. Like the recording of Death Magnetic, a making of the album soon followed on YouTube. Within the 2 hour 20-minute running time, you will see a ton of gear all over the place, much of which I've already mentioned in this video, and some which will appear for the first time, like this purple chrome Warwick, followed by the Sugar Skull Warwick designed by Chloe. She also painted a Day of the Dead theme on the replica 52 Fender, a PJ bass in white with blue pickguard, again reminiscent of Steve Harris, and presumably by Nash. Not to forget what looks like a 10-string bass. I'm sure one of you clever viewers will be able to tell me what that is. Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Of course, hiding away just behind Rob and the band are the amplifiers, and we were treated to the typical Metallica rehearsal space. Primarily, Rob used AxeFXIIIs during performances. This was supplemented with the Ampeg AV, Fender Bassman, Mesa Bass Prodigy, and rectifier heads alongside their adjoining cabinets, and an orange 4x10 in there for good measure. Rob's rack can partially be seen in the background with a rectifier and SVT2 head as usual. Additionally, at the top of the rack to my eye is some sort of effects unit processor like a Line 6 Mod Pro. Metallica.com includes Line 6 effects on Rob's artist page, so I'm pretty sure this is a safe bet. Additionally, sat on top of Rob's amplifier heads are two Boss pedals. One yellow, possibly an overdrive, whilst the white pedal could possibly be a line selector, noise suppressor, or maybe a delay. They look more supplementary than part of his rig. During the bass solo on Spit Out the Bone, Greg Fidelman rolled out a Ready 1 Channel 2 direct box. Behind the Ready, you can see Fidelman tinkering away on an unseen effects pedal. Could it possibly be a tube screamer? Your guess is as good as mine. I'm pretty sure going through the whole behind the scenes could be a video in itself. Let me know if you're interested in that and we can do it another time. In addition to the homemade documentary, Lars would add in an interview with a Malaysian newspaper, the Straits Times, now that YouTube is the world's biggest television station, we figured we may as well knock out a video for every song. The practicality of shooting 12 music videos is kind of crazy, especially when you're trying to promote your record and you're all over the place, and trying to make sure it doesn't leak. It's crazy, but at the same time, fun. So let's go through them, taking a look at the videos the band are actually in. In Hardwired, blink and you'll miss it, one of the oil-stained Warwicks. Atlas Rise used footage from the recording process and shows a black oil with red stripe. The same bass is used in Now That We're Dead. Moth Into the Flame, bronze Aztec. Dream No More, rusty bass with chrome pickguard. Halo on Fire, the same bass. And finally, Am I Savage, Blue Ocean Wave. Starting in the autumn of 2016, Metallica would embark on a worldwide tour of 168 shows across 16 tour legs. In fact, really, this tour is still going on right into summer 2022, only pausing for the coronavirus pandemic. Rob's typical bass gear at the start of the tour starts with the Nash Flamethrowers 1 and 2, followed by Warwick Streamers. In black matte satin, bronze Aztec, now with a helmet sticker, his son Ty's band, Warwick CV Streamer, Aztec deep green and red, black oil with red stripe, Nirvana black oil, burgundy red oil with a black middle part, rusty finish, and Sugar Skull Warwick. The Aztec Tobias is also present, as well as sightings of both the Killer Clown and the Blue Hood Rat Zom. Nash basses returned by 2017, with the white Precision and red Tortoise pickguard, and some more Warwicks for good measure. A brand new white high polish with a polished steel in white, counterpart soon to follow, and the purple Nirvana black transparent satin. Most, if not all, of Rob's gear has been and continues to be used from 2016, right into present day in one form or another. In my books, this is the current Robert Trujillo bass rig, and it shows no signs of changing anytime soon. During the start of the World Magnetic Tour, Metallica's YouTube channel released a look at James and Kirk's rig. A very good video for nerds like me. However, it's missing someone very important. In this video, it's confirmed again, both James and Kirk are using their Fractal FXIIIs. There's a small clue here. Just in crew, Kirk's tech mentioned,
Very similar looking rack to what the other two guys have.
While not shown, I find it very unlikely Robert would not be using something similar. By the way, I did ask for a Robert bass rig 4 years ago and haven't heard anything back. If you want something done, do it yourself. Maybe you guys should go and upvote my comment. That's a thought. Whilst on the subject, it does look like Rob started using the Fractal expression pedal over his Morleys. Justin Carew tweeted in October 2018 of the new arrival of AxeFXIII, stating, "A new journey begins." From here on out, Metallica continue with the minimal stage design. GuitarPlayer.com commented on the minimal aesthetic in a conversation with James Hetfield. "Your rigs are slimming down, your stage is more streamlined. It seems as if you're also streamlining musically a bit, back to the raw thrash metal, but with a modern sound." James replied, "I think we get a little older in life and want to simplify things and stick to the stuff that works." 2019 saw the introduction of the green transparent high polish, fitted with white EMC pickups, and a return of the mean green Rickenbacker. Recorded over the early part of September 2019, Symphony and Metallica would celebrate the 20th anniversary of the original concert. The public release of this event would be seen 1 year later in August 2020. During this very special concert, Rob played the black and gold Cliff Burton tribute bass, his Warwick Ocean Blue, chrome polish with white pickguard, green transparent high polish, purple Nirvana, and golden purple 5-string. Side note, he would also use a lime green version in later acoustic events in 2020 and 21, and also the original Nash Flamethrower 1. 2020 saw Metallica and the rest of the world grind to an abrupt halt, following the start of the Invisible Menace. While out of the public gaze, the wheels did indeed keep spinning. In January 2020, Rob confirmed with GuitarWorld.com the use of the Warwick RT Artist series in 4 and 5-string models, all of which are fitted with EMG pickups and Bartolini preamps. His amplifiers also consisted of AxeFXIIIs, SBT2 Pros, and 8x10s, mirroring that of what is present at Metallica HQ. When we next see Metallica that May, they're doing the same thing everybody else is, working from home. The band released an acoustic version of Blackend, and with the band contributing from their bedrooms. Rob plays what is presumed to be a Nash Sunburst Precision. Sat carefully in the background is the Black and Copper 62 Nash, Aria Black and Gold 1, and some other normal looking black and white Precisions. That August, Metallica filmed a secret show in Sonoma, California, the first time the band had got together since the S&M 2 performance in September the year prior. Whilst the basses used weren't nothing to write home about, the backline was stacked with a pick and mix of different amplifier cabinets. Boys and their toys, I'm sure. Whilst interesting to look at, the local newspaper Sonoma News would describe the band as almost silent. The band threw themselves into their set, despite playing almost silently. The drums weren't mic'd, and the band wore in-ear Fractal monitors that allowed the musicians and recording engineers audio access to the full sound, without any outward projection. I would like to add there were mics on the drums. It was the amplifier cabinets, however, that were not mic'd, which likely means these amplifiers and cabinets were out for a bit of fun. And someone please tell me what on earth this is. It looks like HAL 9000 if it was a preamp.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Who's Dave? Taking a look at Rob's rack during the same month, August 2020, in this picture we can see a Peterson Strobo rack, a pair of Shure wireless receivers, finally a confirmation of a pair of AxeFXIII preamp effect processors, and on the left there, 2 Matrix power amps. 2021 would be a better year for the band. Metallica would perform once again over live stream for BlizzCon that February, and Rob used his chrome on white streamer. Then on September 10th, 2021, only weeks before this video's release, the band slowly got up to speed by releasing the Metallica Blacklist, a tribute album celebrating the 30th anniversary of the 1991 Black Album. It features covers of every track from the self-titled album, in conjunction with 53 participating artists. In addition to this, the 16th leg of the WorldWired tour began, coincidentally on the 16th of September, warming up with smaller shows in the US and a handful of TV spots such as Jimmy Kimmel Live and Howard Stern. Rob used a combination of Ampeg AVs and 8x10 cabinets. His basses are all very familiar, and he continues using the chrome on white Warwick, alongside purple Nirvana, satin finish matte black, and the ocean finish bass. With restrictions easing up, Metallica have been ramping up their current tour schedule. playing venues large and small alike. The backline nowadays is incredibly sparse, with just a pair of cabinets for James and Kurt, mostly so they can feedback their guitars. Rob, on the other hand, has no backline on stage and continues to use the AxeFXIII unit for much of his rig. As the band is on in-ears, I suppose this shouldn't be a problem. The Metallica official YouTube channel has been releasing brand new performances almost daily. It's only a matter of time when Rob is spotted with new gear. Knowing my luck, it will be right after this video is published. With that said, Primus and Warwick's Facebook page posted these two beauties in October 2021, and they both appear in videos released by Metallica from November. Additionally, it appears that a consumer version of Rob's bass may also be on the horizon. Lastly, like I said at the beginning of this video, the Zon Killer Clown is still played on Sad But True and is currently Rob's longest serving bass. Before we move on to strings and things, I just want to mention a few miscellaneous basses that I couldn't find a good spot for in this video. So, for the completionists out there, a 5-string Gibson Thunderbird used during a rehearsal spot, a root beer coloured 4-string Stingray. These are the only occurrences I've seen of these two basses. If I had to put a date on these basses, I would say it's somewhere around Death Magnetic. More recently, and seen on Rob's Instagram in May 2021, Rob rocks out with a BC Rich Warlock wearing his Sunday best. Lastly, there are a couple of Warwick basses in the Warwick gallery made for Rob. However, I haven't come across them during live performances. Like this RT Signature Nirvana Black with Red Spider, PJ sandblasted chrome red to black, and red transparent, to name a few. There could also be a few Closure Hill basses we haven't seen, like these three. Like most bassists I cover on this channel, almost all of them use EMG pickups, and Robert Trujillo is no different. Rob has used EMG as early as his days in ST and used them on his Tobias basses, and even gone as far as rewiring his Stingray pickups in 1994. Depending on the Tobias used, he would most likely install a brand new pair of EMG jazz pickups. EMGs would come standard on his Fernandes, Yamahas, and Rickenback, some Nashes, and even his first Warwick bass right up until present day. Seymour Duncan pickups have also been spotted over the years, with a 1/4 pound fitted on the Nash 58 and Fender 2 Precision. Additionally, DiMarzio P pickups can be seen on the Nash Jailbreak, Cream Tortoise, and Black Copper, to name a few. Depending on the bass and its intended application, his choice of pickup would usually be passive or active. When asked by GuitarWorld.com, "Do you generally prefer active pickups?" Rob responded, "It just depends on the song or the era. I have a really strong right hand attack, and that plays into it. What happens sometimes with the P-bass with my attack is the string will hit the pickup. If I hit too hard, I get this weird click or clank. With the EMGs, I don't have that problem. Now, with the older, more vintage thrash songs, there are times when I prefer to play a passive P-bass. If there's more of a retro vibe, I'm going to pull out the P-bass 4-string. One day after this very interview, EMG would unveil Robert's very own signature pickup set alongside fan favourite Les Claypool. If you're new to the channel, can I invite you to watch my Les Claypool or Justin Chancellor bass rig videos? They're both very popular and I'd love to share this with you. Links are in the description. As always, check the show notes for a full list of all of the gear Rob has ever used in his career. This includes ST, Infectious Grooves, Ozzy Osbourne, and Metallica. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, ringing that bell on your way out so you won't miss the next video. Speaking of which, it's that time again. I need suggestions. If there's a bassist you want to see on this channel, you tell me in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.